Hi and welcome to GRVO TV, G's Reviews, Views and Opinions. Yesterday the Sony A6300 was announced, which is a replacement, I guess, for the A6000, although being double the price, I guess they will also keep the A6000 for sale for a little while. But essentially it's the upgraded version. And going through the specs, my opinion, right off the bat, is that it's a nice progressed upgrade of the A6000. It's not what I would call groundbreaking in any particular way, but there are some really nice features on it, and I think it's going to be a fantastic camera and a fantastic seller. However, there are a couple of caveats to that, and I think they've missed a trick on a couple of items, and it is only a couple of items, but for me they're quite important. And I'll just quickly go through the things that I think they've missed, and that is the main one is a fully articulating touchscreen. To me, that is just a no-brainer. That should be on all of these types of cameras now. The tilty uppy screen, it's okay, it's better than nothing, but on a camera of that size, I think it should have a fully articulating screen, and it should be touchscreen in the menus. You should have touch to focus, touch to shoot. Going through your menu systems, you should be able to touch, swipe, pinch, zoom, all of that. I think they've missed a trick there. And you can't say Sony don't know how to do touchscreens, because they do some fantastic touchscreens on their phones. So, I would have thought that would have been implemented. The other miss, I think, is that there's no in-body image stabilisation, but I can understand that that could be an issue with the size of the sensor and also overheating and things like that, problems that they've run into on the A7. So, going through the specifications, I'm going to take my time to do this because I've watched at least 4 videos, all the usuals, and every single one of them has got facts wrong about this camera. And if you're putting out a video and you're saying the camera's got this and it does this, you should get it right, really. And I know we all make mistakes, but the mistakes that I've been seeing are ridiculous. I mean, one guy says there's no mic jack on there. There's a 3.5mm mic jack on there. It's in the spec. How you could get that wrong, God only knows. The biggest thing as well that people are getting wrong is that the ISO sensitivity is 100 to 51,200. It's not. It's 100 to 25,600, expandable to 51,000. Now, I never take any attention of those expandable, because all that's doing is bumping the exposure afterwards. It's not a true ISO. So always look at the native ISO, which is up to 25,600. And then you'll probably get usable images 1 or 2 stops down from that, so probably around 12,800, but I would guess it would be starting to get iffy at 6,400. That's generally how these work. It's got a Bion Z or Bion X image processing engine, so it's very quick to process. You can shoot about 20 odd RAW files, about 40 or 50 JPEGs right off the bat, very fast. 11 frames a second in its highest setting, 8 frames a second in the next one down. I don't know if that's I can't tell by the spec whether that's limited, whether you're continuous or not, but usually it drops a little bit in continuous focus. 4K video, and this is really good 4K video. You're getting into GH4, GX8 sort of territory for the video here. It's loads of different options, but essentially you've got the 100 megabits per second, which is fantastic. It's proper 4K. You've got a clean HDMI out if you wish. And what they're doing is they're doing the 4K video slightly different in there. They're like downsampling it from something like a 6K 20 megapixel file rather than cropping in on the sensor. So it's almost like when you take 4K video and down-res it to 1080, you get almost like slightly better 1080. It's weird, but the 4K video on it looks to be fantastic. And is certainly, really going to be up there with Panasonic. Battery life is going to still be crap, I'm afraid, because it looks like they're using the same battery, so you're going to have a handful of batteries with you with this. But it's not so bad on my GX8 and my G7 and the G6, I have to say. All use the same battery, and they're not really that bad, but you're not sort of getting anywhere into like SLR categories or GH4 categories that last for hours. The rear screen is a widescreen 3-inch TFT screen. It's not a touch screen. It's nice. I've used that screen before on the Sony NEX6, and I just felt it was a little bit on the wide side because I think it's a 16:9 aspect ratio, so you lose a bit on the sides, but it's fine. They've gone back to the viewfinder, I think, from the Sony NEX6, which I had, and the NEX7, in that they've gone back up to 2.1 million pixels. And if you remember, when they went from the NEX6 to the A6000, they dropped the viewfinder resolution, and everybody moaned about it, rightly so. You know, why would you go backwards? So they've put that back up now, so that's good. It's an E-mount system. The sensor size is APS-C. As I've said, 24 megapixels. The aspect ratio will be 3:2, which is obviously the same as you would get in, say, a Nikon D7000 or 7100, whereas the Micro Four Thirds is a 4:3 aspect ratio. The body is magnesium alloy, and there's much better weather sealing, so it's a tougher camera now, which is good. You've got 14-bit RAW files, again, that's good. The recording formats is XAVC, AVCHD, MPEG-4, so you've got plenty of options. There's some really nice high quality sort of 1080p slow-mo options as well, where it looks like you can slow the image down maybe 4 to 5 times. That's fantastic. SD card obviously, but it will also take, if you're interested, a memory stick duo card. I've got one of those around here somewhere. I think it's 128 meg. Probably get like 2 photos on it. What else have we got? The autofocus is a 4D fast hybrid phase detect stroke contrast detect with 425 points all over the screen. Now, they're really pushing that as a really good thing. My experience of using cameras where it chooses the focus point and it uses quite a large piece of the screen is that I never get it focusing on what I want it to focus on, so I end up choosing little bunches, if you can do that, of focusing points and things like that. But the fact that you've got coverage over the whole screen is fantastic, and they've got this system whereby if it's tracking a subject, the focus points sort of congregate almost around, they seem to congregate around the object and give more points over the subject. A bit like when you're watching kids play football and follow the ball around and there's a big chunk of people moving around. It's a bit like that. So that looks really good. I mean, if the autofocus is as good as they say it is, it would be fantastic, but generally they're not. I mean, when I bought the NEX6, I was told the autofocus is faster, it's the fastest. And I was in the shop and the guy said, much faster than the Panasonic GX7 that I was looking at. And I was like, but it's not. You go, no, it is. It's on paper. I was like, yeah, but I'm pressing the buttons and it's definitely not as fast as the Panasonic GX7 at the time. And it wasn't. And I had the NEX6 and it definitely wasn't as quick to autofocus as what I'm using now. So always take with a pinch of salt what they say with these things, but if it's half as good as what they say, it's still going to be a pretty good system, and if you can expect it to be better than the A6000, I think it's going to be fantastic. So that's good. It's all good. What else have we got of interest? I've gone over ISO sensitivity. That is interesting as well. The ISO sensitivity in auto mode, it sort of seems to shut off at 6400, which leads me to believe, to go back to what I said at the beginning, that's possibly 6400 is really where you're going to be max on this camera, but we'll see. And that is subjective as well, depending on what you want from your image. You can set the ISO to have a minimum shutter, so the camera won't drop below a certain shutter speed, and that you get that on lots of, like all my Nikons had that. The Panasonics don't do it for some reason, which is a bit annoying, but that's a really nice feature. I think I've covered pretty much everything. So pretty much all positive, and I think it's going to be a fantastic seller, but I think what you need to look out for as well is the people are going to be ditching their Sony A6000s pretty rapidly, I think. So I think there's going to be a glut of A6000s for sale. The price is going to drop, and there are going to be some real good bargains to be had if you want to pick up the slightly older generation, which is still a great camera, great image quality, A6000. So that's always a good thing when a new camera comes out, is being able to pick up the older camera cheap. Like the camera I'm recording on now, the Panasonic G6, paid 125 quid for it, and it's one generation old. It's ridiculous. Will I be switching systems to the Sony A6300? Well, in some ways I'd love to, because I would like a slightly bigger sensor. That would be a good thing. It's never a bad thing. But my issue with it is the same issue that I had when I bought into the system before, which was the lens choices. Now, there is a sort of a caveat to that, in that I've heard that you can use the LAEA, I think it's the 2 or 3 adapter, still retain all the autofocusing functions, and change it to an A mount. So if you can get into A mount glass, you can pick up things like the lenses I would choose would be the Sigma 17 to 52.8, the Tamron 70 to 300. Both of those are less than £300. Then you've got things like the 50mm Sony 1.4, the 30mm Sony 1.4. They're £300 lenses. So you could put together a nice set of A mount lenses. But again, the downside of that is they're quite big, chunky lenses, especially the Tamron. And if you look here, I've got the 45 1.8, so that's equivalent to a 90mm 1.8. I've got the 12 to 35 2.8 Panasonic, so that's me 24 to 70 walk-around lens. And then I've got my telephoto, which is equivalent 90 to 300. But they're all, look at the size of them, they're all tiny. And that's what I like about this system. If you were looking at E-mount lenses, there really isn't anything to cover this range. I mean, there's the 18 to 105 f4, which is the one I'd have. That's over £400. Then the prime lens, the best one I could come up with was the Sony 55 1.8. That's 600 quid. And then for a telephoto, a reasonably priced telephoto, that Sony 55 to 210, I've had that lens and it was rubbish. It wasn't rubbish. It was just slow to focus. That was it. Image quality was okay, but it was just terribly slow to focus, and that defeats the object of the Sony A6300. So the lens I would go for would be the Sony 70 to 200 f4. That's £1,000 for an f4 lens. That's a lot of money for that lens, and again, it's a really big lens. So you're looking at about £2,000 just for your lenses. Whereas these 3 lenses come to £1,000, all brand new. I mean, I didn't spend that on all of these, but you can pick all these 3 lenses up for £1,000. So that's my issue, and they're tiny. I can go out with these 2 in my pocket, that one on the camera, whatever. It's proper portable system. So that's why I will not be changing. Whilst I love the features of the camera, there are some great things in there. There's nothing in there that sort of I want enough to make me switch from my system that I'm using now. So there you go. That's my thoughts on the Sony A6300. As I say, I think it's going to be a fantastic seller, but watch out for those bargains on the A6000, because if you can get that with a couple of lenses, you're going to get some really good deals as well. Although I suppose most people will be selling body only, but there's still going to be some bargains to be had. Anyway, this is GRVO TV, G's Reviews, Views and Opinions. I'll see you soon. Bye.